where more than 2 electrons cannot come in the same space to get excited. And the Hamiltonian itself has at most 2 electron operators. So for all that reason, we say doubly excited determinants are the most important, which means the coefficients in a full CI expansion, the coefficients of this kind are very important. That's what I mean by doubly excited configurations are important. Whenever we say configuration is important, the determinant is just a function. It's important means in a full expansion, its corresponding coefficients are very important. So, for example, we talked of 1s square, 2s square as the beryllium. Sorry, I didn't write this. 1s square, 2s square going to 2p square, or 1s square going to 2p square in a beryllium. So they become very, very important. Then we said that the quadruply excited determinants can also be important because these coefficients, although they are 4 particles, they can be generated by 2 independent particle excitations. So let's say AB going to PQ, CD going to RS at the same time. So time here is just a metaphor. It's not really the time sense we have not brought, but it means that independently they get excited, and each of these coefficients are important, so their products are less important, but it is still important. So quadruples are actually more important than triples. So we normally have doubles, quadruples. From the doubles, you can have hextuples similarly, and so on. So I think this is just an understanding, and this will actually lead to the couple cluster. The proper way of taking this will lead to couple cluster, which we are not doing, because right now these coefficients are simply linearly independent. We have not written these coefficients as product of the doubles. If we start writing, that will actually lead to the couple cluster wave function. So we will see that later. Then we wrote in a block form as a linear expansion. Then we said that the CI matrix we can write and then simply diagonalize the CI matrix. Then we noted that there are certain terms like the Bernoulli's theorem, the Hartree-Fock with singles doesn't couple. Hartree-Fock with triples also doesn't couple because of the Slater rule. And we wrote down all the Slater rule of 1 excitation, 2 excitations difference, and 3 onwards is anyway 0. And we showed the Bernoulli's theorem with 1 excitation. That's the form. Then we said this is nothing but, by the definition of the Fock operator, it is nothing but chi-A star F chi-P, and because they are eigenfunctions of the Fock operator, this is diagonal, so this value is 0. So that leads us to the Bernoulli's theorem. Okay? All right. So if you do only CIS, then it's a completely block diagonal, which means the Hartree-Fock will be one of the solutions, and this part will give you other excited state solutions. So ground state energy in CIS is Hartree-Fock, correlation energy is 0. So singles alone do not help for the ground state. So that's important. Let me write this for the ground state. Of course, for the excited states, you can do singles. So ground state essentially means one of the eigenvalues will remain unchanged. It was Hartree-Fock and then remains unchanged. All right. So in Slater rule, we said triples is 0. So anyway, so these are some of the things that we discussed. And then we said that even in the blocks where there is a single, triples, doubles, quadruples, which are not 0, but many of the integrals will be 0. For example, this is not 0, but this will be 0. This is also singly excited. This is also triply excited, but they differ by 4 occupations. Here, instead of A, there's a P. Here, A is there, but B, C, D are replaced by Q, C, D. So here, B, C, Ds are there. So P, B, C, D, and here A, Q, R, S. So these are 4 electron excitations. So those are 0. So that led to the fact that even though the entire block is not 0, many of the blocks are sparse. Okay. Then we said that the linear variation solutions of, that we got by variation method is the same as the method of projection. So many times we are going to use the method of projection to do this. Then we further introduce the concept of intermediate normalization, where the coefficient is 1. So, and the total normalization is not equal to 1. And then we wrote this in the intermediate normalization form, in which you can see that the total normalization is now 1, because this is 1 plus all these coefficients square. So this has to be greater than 1, because they are all positive. If this has to be 1, then everything has to be 0. And then we wrote down by projection method the E correlation, and we simplified these to a double excitations. As we saw that we can simplify with double excitation. We further introduced another important concept of a normal order Hamiltonian by subtracting E Hartree-Fock from both sides, so that I can directly get the result of E correlation. So then finally we obtained E correlation is only doubles. Doubles their coefficient. So you can see the importance of the double excitations. However, if I do a larger CI, these numbers will change. So that is why double CI, singles double CI, singles doubles triples, quadruple, they all give different values because these doubly excited amplitudes change. So that was the basic idea. That's it. I think we summarize this in the blog, proving Brillouin's theorem, physically why doubly excited are important, sparse matrix nature of the CI matrix. For example, even though this is not zero, many of the elements are zero. CIS does not contribute to correlation energy to the Hartree-Fock, so it of course gives you excited states. Then intermediate normalization was a convenience. This was also a convenience that instead of H, we use H minus E Hartree-Fock, so the direct equation of correlation energy. We also showed that the linear variation is same as the projection method, and using the projection method, we derive the correlation energy. And it explicitly depends on only doubly excited amplitudes. Okay, so some of these things we did, and now we took the dissociation of the hydrogen molecule problem. So we just came to the hydrogen dimer dissociation. So I will restart in that problem. So I will share with you, the videos are already going, but if you want, I will share with you the slides also. I will upload that in the Wheeler. So today is 18. All right, so we look at the H2 dimer problem in DCI. So what we are now doing is a double CI. For hydrogen dimer. So we have in a minimal basis. So in minimal basis, you take for each hydrogen only one s orbital, and you get two molecular orbitals, sigma g and sigma u, for both the hydrogens. So what we are looking at is a hydrogen dimer dissociation problem, which means these two hydrogen, A and B, they don't interact. They don't interact. So you have a double, two electrons here, we have a two electron here. So the Hartree-Fock of such a system would be sigma g A square, sigma g B square. I hope that's clear to all of you. This will remain sigma g because they are non-interacting. I'm again repeating, we are looking at the dissociation problem. Since they're non-interacting, they will remain the same. So there will be no difference of the SC of Hartree-Fock sigma g's will not change. So I can simply write this as sigma g. Then we go to the DCI. So what will have DCI? DCI will have all possible double excitations, right? All possible double excitations. Let's try to. So what is the double excitations? These two electrons can get excited here, or the two electrons can get excited here, not both together. Because they are dissociative, there is no excitation like this. This is not possible. So two hydrogen molecules are separated. So the only two double excitation amplitude or only doubly excited determinants possible are one in which sigma g A square is being excited to sigma u A square, or sigma g B square getting excited to sigma u B square, which means I have sigma u A square into sigma g B square, or sigma g a square sigma u b square. Please let me know if it is clear, because there is no excitation from sigma g a to sigma u b or sigma g b to sigma u a, not possible. Simply because they are well separated. It is possible, but the integral, the coefficient will become 0 because it involves a 2-electron integral, right, in any double excitations, and that will become 0. Because you know by Slater rule, there will be 2-electron integral between A and B, and that integral will fall apart because there is a distance dependence in the integral. So that is the reason this there is so I will have only 3 configurations. So I hope it's clear what I'm talking about. That I so your psi DCI will then become the psi 0 of psi Hartree-Fock, which is nothing but sigma g a square plus sigma g b square plus a coefficient which is sigma g a square sigma u b square determinant plus another coefficient which is sigma g b square sigma u a square. Now it is very clear that by symmetry, that since it's a dihydrogen molecule, these 2 configurations will have the same coefficients. I don't have to even do that, but we can actually show that by doing actual calculation, okay, of the dissociation problem. Okay, so I can actually do C1 and C2, and by actual expression, I can show that they're equal. Doesn't matter. And I've also used intermediate normalization, so this is equal to 1. The psi Hartree-Fock is equal to 1. Now, you can, of course, write it in a more general form instead of sigma g, sigma u, and that is what Zabur-Oslund does. It just writes it as the orbital 1 and orbital 2 based on A and B. It doesn't matter. I can now set up the CI matrix for this. So how do I set up CI matrix? What will be the dimension of the CI matrix? It will become 3 by 3 because there are 3 determinants. And all I would require is integrals of this kind. Psi Hartree-Fock, H psi doubly excited. So psi sigma g a square sigma g b square or sigma g a square to sigma u a square of this kind. So basically, I will require a determinant of this kind: sigma g a square, sigma g b square, the Hamiltonian, then one of them sigma u a square, sigma g b square, or vice versa. So I hope it's clear. So that's the kind of matrix element that I require to evaluate this. And then there is a second set of matrix element, which is basically between the doubles itself. So sigma g a square, sigma u b square, the Hamiltonian, and again sigma g a square, sigma u b square. So I hope you understand. These are doubles and doubles. So you can see this is excited, this is excited, both side double excitation. Then I can, if I know this integral, I can set up. By symmetry, you can immediately imagine that all values which are doubly excited like this, will have the same value, and all which are doubles to doubles will also have the same value. The symmetry. Is it clear to all of you? So I have two sets of integrals. One this, two this. So one of them is Hartree-Fock to doubles. Another is one doubles to another doubles of all kinds. There are two doubles, so four integrals of that kind will come. Okay, and we will see what are the values for those. So let me now look at an integral of this kind, type 2, which is sigma g a square. There are four kinds, sigma u b square. So that's the first one that I have written. These are all determinants. Hamiltonian, then sigma g, a square, sigma u b square. So this is the type where it is diagonal. So this is diagonal where both of them are actually identical, but both are doubly excited. Okay. So these values, I am just giving some value. So you can actually calculate this. So let me call this value as 2 delta. These are basically average value. So it will involve the 1 electron integral of sigma Ga, 1 electron integral of sigma ub, 2 electron integral. So you know how to evaluate this by Slater rule. So it's a sum over all the orbitals and half of the 2 electron integral involving this. So this is like the Hartree-Fock. So instead of in the Hartree-Fock you have sigma Ga, sigma Gb. Instead of that you have a sigma ub. But let me take another type where it is different. So sigma Ga square, sigma ub square. But this side, it's the other doubly excited. So in which sigma Ga square is now excited to sigma ub square, and this remains sigma u a square, and this remains sigma gb square. So it's other type, which means in this case it is a diagonal matrix element. In the other case, I'm connecting this with this. Okay. So one of them is sigma Ga square, where I've excited in the hydrogen molecule B. In another case, I've excited the hydrogen molecule A. The other remain the same. So with respect to Hartree-Fock, which is sigma Ga square, sigma Gb square, they are, so this is my Hartree-Fock. If you remember, this is my Hartree-Fock. So compared to this, both of them are doubly excited. But they're different there are two double excited configurations are possible. So both of them are not the same. If you look at this matrix element, can you tell me what will be the value? Can somebody tell me what will be this value? This I just gave a value 2 delta. It has a value, but let us assume this is 2 delta. It's a definition.
This should be 0, sir.
0, right. I think, is it clear to everybody? Because if you compare the two determinants on the left and the right, you will see there are 4 electron difference, 4 occupation difference. Because here you have 2 electrons in sigma G, alpha beta, 2 electrons in sigma UB, alpha beta. Here, none of these spin orbitals are here. Is it clear to all?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, is sigma Ga and sigma Gb, like
Yeah.
the orbital, are different?
They are not different. They are not
The
different.
same.
No, 1 minute. They are not different in the structure, but they are different because the orbitals also depend on the coordinates.
Oh, okay.
So the coordinates of the two hydrogen molecules are different. So they are well separated. If you look at all the orbitals that you have looked at the MO, they are linear combinations of atomic orbitals. Atomic orbitals themselves depend on the coordinate of the atom. I hope you remember. In Slater or Gaussian, right? And that is where this 4 center 2 electron integral, 3 center 2 electron integrals arise. So in that sense, the difference. Okay. Is it clear that this will be 0? Very
Yes, sir.
similarly, very similarly, when I do the type 1 now, which is basically sigma G A square, sigma G B square. So that's a Hartree-Fock. That's a type 1, the Hamiltonian. And then there are two doubly excited configurations. So here there are only two types. So sigma G A square can go to sigma U A square. And this can remain sigma G B square. Or from the Hartree-Fock, you go to the other one. But this will remain as it is, and this will become sigma U B square, right? There are two of this kind, and plus their conjugate. Because when I do the CI matrix, this will come here, this will go there. Here, of course, I am taking all four, so conjugates are all taken care. If you do this, then the Hamiltonian matrix can be easily set up. So let me write down the first term of the Hamiltonian matrix, which is the Hartree-Fock, average value of the Hartree-Fock. But I'm writing now normal order Hamiltonian. So you have already seen this will become 0 because you have H minus E Hartree-Fock. Is it clear? So the first term is 0. The second term is the H minus E Hartree-Fock with the H minus E Hartree-Fock with the Hartree-Fock and one of the doubly excited. So type 1 integral. And I have called that K12. Yeah, I'm not giving this type 1. So this is, I'm calling it K12. That's an exchange integral. Why is K12? I will tell you. And then the Hartree-Fock with the other doubly excited will also be the same. Because they are identical. By symmetry, you can see they'll be identical. All right. So both of them are K12. And by symmetry, this will also become K12. And then you have 4 terms which are doubles with doubles. So 2 of them which are diagonal would be 2 delta, 2 delta, and the off-diagonal ones will be 0 because they are the 4 electron differences. I hope you can see this integral. So what we have done is the following. We have defined sigma G A square, sigma G B square with sigma G A square, and this gets excited, let's say sigma U B square as K12. I hope you can easily calculate this integral, and you can see that this is identical. So what will be the average value? The 1 electron part will be 0. It will have only 2 electron integral. And what will be the 2 electron integral? That will differ the ones which are varying. So what is the variation? Sigma GB alpha, sigma GB beta, going to sigma U alpha, sigma U beta, right? So you will have a 2 electron integral of sigma G alpha, sigma G beta, antisymmetric, sigma U alpha, sigma U beta. All are on center B. So center is no longer important. So you can see, if I expand this, the Coulomb part will be 0 because the Coulomb part will only survive. So if we expand this, it is sigma G1, alpha 1, right? Star, sigma G2, star, 1 by R12, sigma U star 1, sigma U1, sorry, sigma U2. There is no star here, beta 1, beta 1. So that will be our integral. If I take the exchange, what will happen? The alpha and beta will come here and that will become 0 because of alpha beta orthonormality. So you end up with only this integral. It's like a Coulomb integral, sigma G star 1, which here it's a sigma U1. That's the only difference. So it is an integral involving the 2 orbitals. And this we are calling K1. This is just by definition. I'll come to a more general term in CI, but this is just K12, and that is essentially the 2 electron integral that we are talking about. So that's the definition, and 2 delta I already defined. It is diagonal to diagonal double excitations, but that's an average value. So that is 1 electron and 2 electron part. We are not expanding this. We are simply writing this as 2 delta. And as soon as it becomes up diagonal, it is 4 electron difference. So that becomes 0. So is this clear to all of you? This matrix by this definition. So I require only these two parameters by symmetry. And since this integral either depends only on the center B or on the center A, the result will be identical. It does not involve both the centers, as you can see. This is now center B. Everything is center B. So if I just replace by A, the next integral, it will give the same result by symmetry. Please let me know if this construction, it's a very simple problem, minimal basis. If the construction is something that you have understood. Can I proceed? So then your CI problem becomes 0, K12, 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 2 delta, 2 delta, 0, 0, 1, C1, C2. I hope you understand this. Your C0 is 1. That is fixed. Okay? Equal to E correlation. I am calling it for dimer in DCI. So I'm writing everything. I'm doing a DCI for hydrogen dimer. E correlation 1, C1, C2. So that's the eigenvalue problem. HC equal to EC. E correlation C I have written full form column. There are three coefficients here because my double CI configuration is only 3. This is my double CI, right? So one excited on A, one excited on B. That's all. Because there is no possibility of cross excitation, so my double CI problem is just this. This is a very simple problem, 3 by 3 problem, but it can be solved analytically. So for example, I multiply first row by first column. I will get the correlation energy. So you will see 0 into 1, K12 into C1, K12 into C2. So I have K12 C1 plus C2 equal to the E correlation for the dimer. Is it clear? So first row, I'm just generating the 3 equations. Then first row into second column gives me this. So K12 plus 2 delta into C1 equal to E correlation times C1. The next one, K12 plus 2 delta C2. So that's the only difference. K12 plus 2 delta C2 is the E correlation C2. So of course, whenever I'm saying E correlation, I mean double CI. I'm not writing the full thing because of this space problem. So 2 delta C1, 2 delta C2. Is it clear, these 3 equations? It's just matrix multiplication. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, good. I think if you look at this equation, you can easily see that C1 is equal to C2. So you solve both this equation for C1 and C2 in terms of E correlation. So this is a very interesting idea. I don't know the E correlation yet. What are my unknowns? My unknowns is this, this, and this. And there are 3 equations. So you should be able to solve it. 3 equations, 3 unknowns. So no problem. This is a simple mathematical problem. But let me write down C1. If you look at C1, how do I write down? I separate these 2. So then I write this as K12 divided by the dimer E correlation of DCI minus 2 delta. I think it's very easy to do this because I'm going to write K12 equal to this minus this. So this minus this is 2 E correlation minus 2 delta into C1. Then I write C1 equal to this. Is it clear? And I can write exactly in the same manner, C2 equal to K12 remember, I still do not know E correlation, but it's a formal expression, but it automatically shows that C1 is equal to C2. And that is what you expect because they are well separated, these two determinants are identical. Because physically, if you see, one determinant represents an excitation here, another represents an excitation here, other remaining the same. Both are not getting excited same time because it's overall double excitations. So you can clearly see that the C1 is equal to C2. And then I can calculate, once I know the C1 is equal to C2, I can substitute the result here. So from these two equations, I have obtained this. Now I'm going to go back here because C1 is equal to C2 and I know their value. So if I just substitute this, a very simple equation, I will get two dimer ecorrelation DCI equal to 2 times K12 square. Please check this. It's very easy to do. 2 ecorrelation DCI minus 2 delta. So what I've basically done is to substitute here. So this remains 2 ecorrelation, right? There is no C1 here, and here you just put K12 into K12 divided by this, and twice. So I have it twice. C1 equal to C2, so I have done it twice. Is it clear? So you can see whatever is right hand side, I just wrote in the left hand side, and the one that was left hand side, I have written the right hand side. Is it clear? Now you can see I've been eliminated C1, C2. Now from this equation, I'm going to compute the ecorrelation. And you can see this will be a very general strategy which is used to solve the eigenvalue problem in an iterative manner. Very interesting idea of solution. And now I have a quadratic equation. And I will get 2 roots. I'll get 2 roots of correlation energy, which I can write as 2K12 square, delta minus delta square plus 2K12 square to the power half. I mean, that's a trivial thing that you can very quickly do. By multiply this and then you solve the, I'm not going to do this, solve the quadratic equation, you get one of the roots as this. Of course, when you do, there is a plus and minus, but one of the roots will become this. I will now give you a homework that I do a monomer calculation. Please understand the homework. Just take only one molecule, A. So you have a sigma G, you have a sigma U. I do a DCI. So I do a monomer DCI. So what is my problem for DCI? Psi DCI for the monomer. So that will become sigma G A square. It's only 2 electron problem, right? Sigma G A square plus some coefficient or K sigma U A square. Correct? I've just excited these 2 electrons here. So it will be this Hartree-Fock plus double excitation. Again, using intermediate normalization, this problem will be identical for A and B. What I'm now asking you is by using the same integral, the integrals will not be different. The integrals will not be different. Can you calculate the monomer energy? Please remember, what are the integral that you require? It's a 2 by 2 problem. One is, of course, the sigma G A square itself with it. That's a Hartree-Fock. That will become 0 because when I subtract minus C Hartree-Fock, it will become 0. Then Hartree-Fock to doubles or doubles to Hartree-Fock, complex conjugate, and doubles to itself. The integrals that I have given you, the C1, C2, and the K12 and 2 delta already includes this. Even though they look like a 4 electron integrals, this is actually K12. So you can imagine that your 2 delta, the diagonal term of this is exactly 2 delta. And you have a cross term which will be exactly like K1. So you should be able to write the monomer result. I will only give you the result. It is a monomer, so I'm writing 1, E correlation DCI equal to delta, again, minus delta square plus K12 square to the power half. Please note this and note this. Your assignment is to show this. Also note that for a singlet state, this is not only DCI, this is exact. Because there is no single excitation, singlet sigma G, this is exact. Because if I do an excitation of one electron from G to U, that will go to a different symmetry. I can make a singlet state, but it will become U symmetry. I hope all of you have learned group theory. So if you excite from G to U, one of the electrons will be in G, one of the electrons will be U, so it will become a U symmetry. So if I want only a singlet sigma G of the hydrogen molecule, this is actually exact. And that is what we are trying to do everywhere. So please show so that the DCI or the exact value in the minimal basis is just equal to do this. I hope now using the K12 and delta, which are same integrals, you'll very quickly see that. I wrote it for 4 electrons, but for 2 electrons, it is exactly identical. So I would give this as a homework. I have not given too many homework, so I think this may be a good homework problem. So let me write down the dimer DCI, that is 2 E correlation DCI is equal to, let me write it down, delta minus delta square plus 2 K12 square to the power half, and the monomer DCI, which is also happens to be exact for the singlet, for the sigma state, is equal to monomer E correlation. So whenever I'm writing this superscript, it means how many Mars are there. Delta minus delta square plus K12 square to the power half. So very similar, except that there is a factor 2 here, which is missing. I hope you see this. And now, I hope you also see the problem. What is the problem? You expected that this energy, because both of them are DCI, it turns out that this is also exact, that's a different matter. This is also exact, that's a different matter. But both are DCI, you expected that the energy of this should be double the energy of this, because it's a dissociation problem. H4 is going to H2 plus H2. So you expect the energy of this to be sum of the 2 energies. And now look at this. It is not the sum. In fact, there is a factor 2, but the factor 2 has come here. Not multiply the whole thing here. So there should have been a factor 2 here, the whole thing. But factor 2 has come inside the square root. Is it clear? If I continue to do the same way and I do NMAR DCI, I hope you understand what I mean by same way. That means I have N H2 molecules, etc. N of them, and they're all non-interacting. They're non-interacting monomers. Okay, so I think you can actually use the same K12 and 2 delta, and I can write the N E correlation. Now it's an N, because NMAR DCI would be exactly similar, except that these 2 delta minus delta square plus n times K12 square to the power square root. So very similar to this result. The 2 will now be replaced by n in the correlation, whereas the monomer has 1. So everything is just the falling in place. 1, 2, n, everything comes here. This also tells me that the way E correlation DCI builds in terms of the number of monomers is proportional to square root of n. Is it clear? Because you can see the n comes here and not proportional to n. That is what I would have expected. In the exact case, if everything was exact, then the E correlation should be proportional to n. Which means if I have n monomers, the energy of these should be sum of the n monomer energies in the exact limit. And here it is now proportional to n. Here it is now proportional to square root of n. Sorry. In the exact case, it should be proportional to n. But in the DCI, it is proportional to square root n. Is it clear?
Sir,
Yes.
sir, suppose like these H2 molecules that are separated apart are interacting, then there was a chance like sigma G
Yeah. That's a
H2
different
to jump to
problem.
sigma UB too.
Right. That's a different
Okay.
problem.
And
I am
sir,
saying that, yeah. Tell me.
uh,
Yeah,
okay,
that
sir.
would have been a
And
different problem because there will be a lot more integrals will come.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And sir, you said na, like the monomer DCI should be twice of 2 equilation, dimer
Right.
DCI. This is something we should
No.
expect.
Reverse. The
Sorry,
dimer
the
should be 2 times this.
two times. But
Yes.
should we expect that? Because sir, even
Yes.
in
Yes.
H2 molecules that we are separating it at far distance, but we are taking this system as a whole because we have 4 orbitals, na?
Yes. So I'm not separating hydrogen. I'm separating hydrogen molecule with hydrogen molecule. So this distance is infinity. Just like in hydrogen atom, when I separate these two, the energy of the hydrogen molecule should be hydrogen atom plus hydrogen atom, right? Ideally. But in restricted Hartree-Fock, that is a problem, that it does not happen. You remember? So we have to do UHF because of spin and all
Yes.
that, it does not happen. So the same thing, theoretically, any two fragments, forget about molecular atom, any two fragments A and B, if they're well separated, then the energy of these should be equal to energy of A plus B, anything, whatever is A and B. In that case, my A and B are two hydrogen atoms. In this case, my A and B are hydrogen molecules. So I'm not saying these two hydrogen atoms are not separated. They are interacting. I'm only looking at the separation between the two monomers. So this is my monomer result. Here I'm not discussing whether it is hydrogen atom plus hydrogen atom. Right? This is an interacting monomer. What I am saying that the NMR result, which are non-interacting, should have been sum of these monomer result, but it does not become sum. It becomes the N comes here. Is it clear?
Okay. But this is something should happen, but it is not happening.
That is exactly the point.
Okay.
Exactly the same reason that the
Yeah.
restricted Hartree-Fock, it was not happening. So DCI, what I'm trying to tell you, the DCI is not a good method. It's not a good approximation because it does not dissociate the molecule correctly. At the dissociation level, because it cannot dissociate correctly. When can it dissociate correctly? When can it not dissociate correctly? We have to see. But it is very clear that even H4 going to H2 plus H2, DCI fails. Is it clear? It fails because in exact it should be sum of these two. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think with that I'll close today. So we will see this problem in a more generality when I write down the DCI equation more generally. Today I wrote down only with the sigma g and sigma u, minimal basis, but I can write it in larger number of basis function, larger number of system, but DCI equation. But this is a very instructive problem because it is not exact. DCI is not exact, so it is not happening. As soon as we make for the same H4 problem, and I'm going to show that in the next class, exact. What will be exact now? For singlet sigma g, all it will include is DQCI. Because to make H4 exact, what have we missed out? We have missed out two more configurations. There are one more configurations where, let me see this graph. Yeah, where this of course is not possible. But one more configuration where all the 4 electrons will get excited. Right? When this will get excited as well as this will get excited. I told you, if there's quadruple, when both of them get excited, so that will generate a configuration which is sigma u a square, sigma u b square, which is missing here, right? And if I include that, that will become exact. As soon as I do that DQCI, I will show you in the next class that the same problem, and the problem is just very simple problem here. So this will become, instead of 3 by 3, 4 by 4 problem. You can solve the problem exactly, and you will get the energy of H4 as 2 times the monomer. Because now both of them are, so this will become DQCI, this is DCI. And both of them are exact. This is exact for the monomer, this is exact for the dimer. Of course, if you do H6, yeah, this is not exact. But only for H4, at least I will show that if you do doubles quadruple CI, you get exactly this. Then a minimal basis. And I will only show in minimal basis because it is more complicated to show. But this is true for any number of basis functions. So this means in exact case, you have faith that in exact theory you can do this, but your DCI cannot do. So DCI has a problem. And in particular, I'm suggesting that the DCI goes as proportional to square root n. And that by itself is a problem because that means if I calculate per particle correlation energy, this will become 1 by square root n. I hope you can understand square root n divided by n. And in the limit of large particle, this will actually go to 0. Because n becomes, in the limit of n tending to infinity, this will become 0. The large number of particles. So that means if I have a very large system, after doing everything, per particle correlation energy actually vanishes, which is a disaster because of this square root n dependence. All right, I will come to this issue. So tomorrow's class, let me conclude here because I have another meeting. Tomorrow's class, Professor Sangeeta Sen will take. I will request her to take as a tutorial. So she has certain pending things to do. She will do it. And I will come back on Saturday at 10 a.m. I will write it. In case any of you has a problem, please let me know very quickly by today. So Saturday at 10 a.m. I will take the class. And if necessary, I will talk to Dr. Sen. If I have to generate a new link, I will generate. If this link works, then there is no problem. Okay.